When HOA President Linda called cops to evict Sarah from her lake cabin for having wrong-colored chairs, she thought she had won. But Linda had no idea this quiet woman was about to become the state police superintendent. What happened next left the entire neighborhood speechless. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Detective Sarah Williams had always been good at reading people. 25 years in law enforcement had taught her to spot trouble before it started, to recognize the difference between genuine authority and playground bullying, and to stay calm when others lost their minds. But nothing had quite prepared her for retirement, or for dealing with HOA President Linda Morrison. Sarah and her husband Tom had bought their lake cabin 2 years ago, a cozy retreat on Crystal Lake where they planned to spend their golden years. Tom was already retired from his job as a high school principal, and Sarah was looking forward to joining him after her final promotion came through. The cabin was perfect, rustic but comfortable, with a dock that stretched into clear water and windows that framed sunsets like paintings. What they hadn't counted on was Linda Morrison, a woman who treated the Lakeside Estates Homeowners Association like her personal kingdom and seemed to believe that retirement meant having nothing better to do than police her neighbors' every move. The first sign of trouble came on a quiet Tuesday morning in June. Sarah was sitting on her porch, still in her pajamas, drinking coffee and reading case files on her laptop when a golf cart pulled into her driveway. Out stepped Linda Morrison, a thin, sharp-faced woman in her 60s with perfectly styled gray hair and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. "Excuse me," Linda called out, marching up to the porch steps. "Are you the new owner?" Sarah looked up from her laptop, taking in Linda's aggressive posture and demanding tone. "Good morning. I'm Sarah Williams. And you are?" "Linda Morrison, president of the Lakeside Estates HOA. We need to discuss several violations I've observed at this property." Sarah closed her laptop and stood up, her police instincts immediately alert. "Violations? What kind of violations?" Linda pulled out a tablet and began reading from it like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "First, your dock chairs are the wrong color. HOA guidelines specify earth tones only. Those blue chairs are clearly in violation. Second, you have unauthorized wind chimes hanging from your porch. Third, your garbage cans were visible from the street yesterday, which is against community standards." Sarah blinked, processing this unexpected assault. "I'm sorry, what?" "These are serious violations," Linda continued, her voice getting shriller. "As a new resident, you need to understand that we maintain high standards here. This isn't some trailer park where people can do whatever they want." Something in Linda's tone, the condescension, the immediate hostility, the assumption that she could march onto someone's property and start making demands, triggered every protective instinct Sarah had developed over her career. "Ms. Morrison," Sarah said calmly, "I'm going to need you to show me where these rules are written down, and I'm going to need you to explain what gives you the authority to enforce them." Linda's eyes narrowed. "I just told you, I'm the HOA president. It's my job to maintain community standards. Clearly, you're not familiar with how civilized neighborhoods operate." The insult hung in the air like smoke. Sarah had dealt with plenty of people who thought they could intimidate others through sheer arrogance, but rarely had she encountered it this blatantly in her personal life. "I'd like to see the HOA documents," Sarah said. "The bylaws, the recorded covenants, the legal authority for these rules you're citing." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "All new residents should have received those documents at closing. If you can't be bothered to read them, that's not my problem. The violations stand, and you have 48 hours to correct them or face fines." With that, Linda turned and marched back to her golf cart, leaving Sarah standing on her porch in her pajamas, wondering what had just happened. That afternoon, Sarah called their real estate agent and asked about HOA documents. The response was enlightening. "HOA documents?" The agent laughed. "There's no active HOA at Lakeside Estates. There was one back in the 1980s, but it was dissolved years ago when the developer went bankrupt. The covenants expired with it. Some of the older residents still pretend there's an HOA, but it has no legal standing whatsoever." Sarah felt a familiar sensation, the satisfaction of a puzzle piece clicking into place. Linda Morrison was running a fake HOA, using non-existent authority to bully her neighbors. It was exactly the kind of petty fraud that Sarah had dealt with countless times in her career. But Sarah decided to wait and see how far Linda would push things. She'd learned that sometimes the best way to catch someone in a lie was to let them keep talking. She didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Sarah found a formal-looking notice taped to her front door. "Final violation notice, Lakeside Estates HOA. Failure to comply with community standards within 24 hours will result in legal action and involvement of local authorities. Sarah read the notice twice, then called Tom, who was in town running errands. "Honey, you need to see this," she said. "Our neighbor Linda is threatening to call the police on us." "The police? For what?" "Blue chairs and wind chimes, apparently." Tom was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, you know I don't like to get involved in neighborhood drama, but this woman sounds unhinged. Maybe we should just change the chairs to keep the peace." Sarah understood her husband's perspective. Tom had spent his career trying to avoid conflict, finding diplomatic solutions to problems. But Sarah had spent hers confronting bullies, and she recognized Linda Morrison for exactly what she was. "Tom, there is no HOA. She's basically running a protection racket, using fake authority to control people. If we give in to her demands, she'll just make more demands. And she'll keep bullying other people who don't know better. So what do you want to do?" Sarah looked at the fake violation notice in her hand. "I want to see how far she's willing to take this charade." The answer came sooner than expected. Sarah was in her garden the next afternoon, still in her work clothes from a day at the station, when she heard sirens. 2 sheriff's deputies were pulling into her driveway, followed by Linda Morrison in her golf cart. Sarah stood up, brushing dirt from her hands, and watched as Deputy Martinez and Deputy Chin approached. She recognized both of them. They'd worked together on several cases over the years. "Afternoon, Detective Williams," Deputy Martinez said, looking confused. "We got a call about a disturbance at this address?" Before Sarah could respond, Linda was out of her golf cart and marching toward them. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," Linda announced dramatically. "This woman has been repeatedly violating community standards and ignoring official HOA notices. She's clearly disturbing the peace and undermining neighborhood safety." Deputy Chin looked at Linda, then at Sarah, then back at Linda. "Ma'am, what exactly is the nature of the disturbance?" "She has unauthorized wind chimes," Linda declared, pointing accusingly at Sarah's porch. "And her chairs are the wrong color. And she refuses to acknowledge the authority of the homeowners association." Both deputies stared at Linda in silence for a moment. Deputy Martinez cleared his throat. "Ma'am, you called 911 to report wind chimes?" "This is about maintaining community standards," Linda huffed. "About respecting authority and following rules. This woman clearly thinks she's above the law." Sarah stepped forward. "Officers, I think there might be some confusion here. Ms. Morrison has been claiming to represent an HOA that doesn't actually exist." "That's a lie," Linda snapped. "I am the duly elected president of the Lakeside Estates Homeowners Association, and I have full authority to—" "Ma'am," Deputy Chin interrupted, "can you show us the legal documents establishing this HOA?" Linda's face flushed red. "I don't have to prove anything to you. I made a legitimate complaint about violations, and it's your job to enforce the law." Deputy Martinez looked at Sarah. "Detective, do you have any documentation about the HOA status of this property?" Sarah nodded and went inside to get the folder her real estate agent had prepared. She returned with copies of the property deed, the expired covenant documents, and the bankruptcy records showing when the original HOA was dissolved. The deputies reviewed the documents while Linda watched nervously, her confidence visibly wavering. "Ma'am," Deputy Martinez said to Linda, "these documents show that there's no active HOA at this property. The original association was dissolved in 1987. "That's impossible," Linda sputtered. "I've been president for 15 years. "President of what?" Deputy Chin asked. "If there's no legal HOA, then there's no legal authority to issue violations or collect fines." Sarah watched Linda's face cycle through confusion, anger, and finally desperation. She'd seen it before. The moment when someone realized their bluff had been called and they had no cards left to play. "You don't understand," Linda said, her voice getting higher. "We have standards to maintain. Property values to protect. We can't just let people do whatever they want." "Ma'am," Deputy Martinez said patiently, "people are allowed to do whatever they want on their own property as long as they're not breaking actual laws. Having blue chairs and wind chimes isn't illegal." Linda turned to Sarah, her eyes blazing with frustration. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can just move in here and ignore how we do things? Well, I'm not done with you. I have connections. I know people in law enforcement who will take this seriously." Sarah felt a familiar calm settle over her. The same feeling she got when a suspect was about to say something they'd regret. "What kind of connections?" she asked quietly. "My brother-in-law is a state trooper," Linda declared. "He'll straighten this out. He'll make sure you understand that we don't tolerate troublemakers in this community. Deputy Chin coughed, trying to hide a smile. Deputy Martinez looked like he was struggling not to laugh. Ma'am, Deputy Martinez said, before you make any more calls, there's something you should know about Detective Williams here. Linda looked confused. What are you talking about? Sarah decided it was time to end this charade. She pulled out her wallet and showed Linda her badge and identification. Ms. Morrison, I'm Detective Sarah Williams, and as of next month, I'll be Colonel Sarah Williams, the new superintendent of the state police. The color drained from Linda's face so quickly that Sarah was momentarily concerned she might faint. You're in law enforcement? 25 years, Sarah said. The last 10 as a detective, and the next however many as the head of the state police. Your brother-in-law? He works for me. Well, he will in about 3 weeks. Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The deputies were no longer trying to hide their amusement. So when you say you have connections in law enforcement who will take this seriously, Sarah continued, you're absolutely right. I take fraud very seriously. I take impersonating authority figures very seriously. And I take harassment and false police reports very seriously. I didn't. This is all a misunderstanding, Linda stammered. Is it? Sarah asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been running a fake HOA for 15 years, collecting fines and dues from people under false pretenses, and using the threat of legal action to intimidate your neighbors. That's not a misunderstanding, that's criminal fraud. Linda looked around desperately as if searching for an escape route. I was just trying to maintain neighborhood standards. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. How many people have paid you fines over the years? Sarah asked. How many people have you threatened with legal action? How many people have you called the police on for fake violations? Linda's silence was answer enough. Deputy Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us to the station. We have some questions about this fake HOA situation. Wait, Linda said, panic creeping into her voice. Can't we work this out? I'll apologize to everyone. I'll admit there's no HOA. I'll stop bothering people about violations. Sarah considered this. In her experience, some people changed when confronted with consequences, while others just got better at hiding their behavior. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah said. First, you're going to provide us with a list of everyone you've collected money from over the past 15 years, and you're going to return every penny. Second, you're going to send a written apology to every resident in this neighborhood, admitting that you had no authority to issue violations or collect fines. Third, you're going to perform community service, real community service, not pretend HOA work. And if I don't? Linda asked weakly. Then you'll be charged with fraud, harassment, filing false police reports, and whatever other charges the district attorney thinks are appropriate. Given that you've been doing this for 15 years, we're talking about felony charges. Linda looked like she might cry. I just wanted people to take care of their properties. I wanted the neighborhood to look nice. Sarah's expression softened slightly. She'd dealt with enough criminals to recognize the difference between malicious intent and misguided behavior. Linda, there's nothing wrong with wanting your neighborhood to look nice. There's nothing wrong with encouraging people to maintain their properties. But you can't lie to people and threaten them to get what you want. You can't pretend to have authority you don't have. I know, Linda whispered. I didn't know how else to get people to listen. Over the next few weeks, Linda followed through on Sarah's conditions. She returned thousands of dollars in fake fines to neighbors who had paid them over the years. She sent detailed apology letters to every resident, admitting her deception and promising to respect everyone's property rights going forward. But the most surprising development came a month later, when Sarah was settling into her new role as state police superintendent. Linda Morrison appeared at her office door, looking nervous but determined. Colonel Williams? I was wondering if I could speak with you. Sarah looked up from her paperwork, surprised. Ms. Morrison, what can I do for you? I wanted to thank you, Linda said, the words coming out in a rush. For not pressing charges. For giving me a chance to make things right. You did the work, Sarah replied. I just gave you the opportunity. Linda sat down in the chair across from Sarah's desk. I've been thinking about what you said. About wanting to help the neighborhood but going about it the wrong way. I was wondering, is there a right way? Sarah leaned back in her chair. What do you mean? I really do care about our community. I want it to be a nice place to live. But I realize now that I was trying to control people instead of working with them. Is there a way to encourage people to take care of their properties without lying to them or threatening them? Sarah considered this. What did you have in mind? Maybe organizing actual community events? Neighborhood cleanups, garden clubs, social gatherings? Ways to bring people together instead of pushing them apart. Sarah smiled. Now that sounds like real community leadership. Over the following months, Linda transformed from the neighborhood tyrant into something closer to a community organizer. She organized lake cleanups, started a neighborhood watch program, a real one coordinated with local law enforcement, and even convinced the county to improve the road maintenance in their area. Sarah watched this transformation with professional interest and personal satisfaction. It wasn't often that someone so completely changed their approach to life, but Linda seemed genuinely committed to making amends for her years of fake authority. The final vindication came during the annual Lake Day celebration that Linda had organized. Sarah was manning the grill for the community barbecue, watching neighbors who had once been terrorized by fake HOA rules now laughing and sharing stories. Tom appeared at her elbow, carrying 2 plates of food. "Penny for your thoughts?" Sarah accepted the plate and looked around at the celebration. "I was just thinking about how sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to give them a chance to become something better." "You think Linda's really changed?" Sarah watched as Linda helped an elderly neighbor set up his fishing equipment, patiently adjusting the chair and making sure he was comfortable. "I think she learned that real authority comes from helping people, not controlling them. And that's a lesson worth learning, even if it took 15 years and a visit from the state police to sink in." Tom chuckled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Sarah grinned. "Too late for that. You're stuck with me." As the sun set over Crystal Lake, Sarah reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. She'd come to the lake looking for peace and quiet in retirement, and instead she'd found herself dealing with fake HOAs and neighborhood drama. But in the end it had worked out better than she could have hoped. The neighborhood was more peaceful now than it had ever been. Linda had learned to channel her energy into positive community building, and Sarah had learned that even in retirement her skills as a law enforcement officer could still make a difference. The lake reflected the orange and pink sunset, and the sound of neighbors laughing and talking filled the air. Sarah's blue chairs, the ones that had started the whole conflict, sat on her dock, facing the water, symbols of the simple truth that sometimes the best response to unreasonable demands is simply to stand your ground. And sometimes, if you're lucky, standing your ground helps other people find theirs too.